Let's jump right into this explainer. We're looking at the parallel evolution of two technologies that literally rewired human civilization: mobile communication and desktop computing power. You know, for decades, these two fields were on totally separate tracks. But today, they've completely collided to build the modern digital world we live in. So, what if I told you the smartphone sitting in your pocket right now is millions of times more powerful than the computers that sent humans to the moon? I mean, it sounds like pure science fiction, right? But it is a literal engineering fact. The sheer scale of our technological leap over the last 50 years is absolutely mind-blowing. But how exactly did we get here? The gap we've crossed is just staggering. On one hand, we've got the Motorola Dynatac from 1983. This thing was a beast. It weighed nearly a full kilogram, cost around $4,000, and gave you, wait for it, just 30 minutes of terrible, static-filled talk time before the battery completely died. On the other hand, we have today's microscopic multi-core AI supercomputers. We didn't just shrink things down, we fundamentally reinvented how we process and share information.
To understand how this all happened, we're going to follow a quick roadmap. We'll start with behemoths to bricks, then digital highways, the multi-core era, pushing limits, and finally, the AI convergence.
All right, part one, from behemoths to bricks, covering the 1970s and 80s. Back then, mobile communication meant lugging around incredibly expensive radio systems mounted in the trunks of cars. They weighed a ton, used massive antennas, and had practically zero coverage. Engineers were desperate for true portability. Now, while phones were still these bulky analog devices, the desktop world was experiencing a literal miracle of miniaturization. Before 1971, computers took up entire rooms, thousands of separate parts. But then, Intel proved you could shrink an entire CPU onto one tiny piece of silicon with the 4004 and later the legendary 8086. That chip laid down the foundational x86 language that, believe it or not, almost all PCs still use today. As these chips evolved into the 32-bit era with the 8386, they introduced an absolute game changer: virtual memory. Think of it like this. If your physical desk gets totally covered in paper, you can't work, right? The 386 chip fixed this by using the hard drive as an infinite imaginary filing cabinet. It seamlessly swapped out data behind the scenes so your computer wouldn't crash. That one specific breakthrough gave us the modern multitasking we totally take for granted today. Moving on to part two, building the digital highway in the 1990s and early 2000s. Both industries suddenly realized they desperately needed wider digital highways to keep up with us. On the mobile side, networks transitioned from 1G, which was basically unencrypted, easily intercepted analog radio waves, to digital 2G. And 2G brought us SMS text messaging. This changed the game overnight. Suddenly, millions of people actually preferred texting over calling. And as we moved into 2.5G and eventually 3G in the early 2000s, data speeds skyrocketed from basic text to mobile video calling, GPS, and the very beginnings of the modern app ecosystem. Now, to handle all this new digital data, desktop CPUs in the 1990s had to get incredibly smart. Processors like the Pentium Pro introduced something called superscalar execution. Instead of a single cook making one meal at a time, the CPU became like a genius restaurant chef. Through what's called speculative execution, it would actually look at the line of customers, guess what data was needed next, and start cooking the fries before you even ordered them. Pretty wild, right? But hey, even a genius chef gets overwhelmed if the kitchen doors are too narrow. By the early 2000s, 32-bit architecture hit a brick wall. It could only access 4 gigabytes of memory. That was it. So companies like AMD and Intel realized they had to completely widen the hardware lanes. They moved away from this single-core toll booth where everything processed one instruction at a time and built a massive 64-bit multi-core highway. Which brings us to part three, the multi-core smartphone era in the mid-2000s. So by the mid-2000s, this relentless pursuit of speed meant both mobile and desktop industries hit a massive, literal wall of heat. Engineers figured out that just revving a single processor engine faster and faster created a total thermal crisis. Chips were turning into space heaters. If you had a laptop back then, you probably remember it physically burning your lap, and the battery dying in a few minutes? The old strategy of just blindly increasing clock speeds was totally dead. The brilliant workaround? The multi-core revolution. Intel engineers basically asked, what if we stop revving one engine until it breaks and instead put 2 highly efficient cores on the exact same chip? This led to designs like the Core 2 Duo. It gave us cooler, quieter machines that could multitask without breaking a sweat. One core could run your video game, while the other silently handled your antivirus scan in the background. And right at this same time, the mobile industry went through a total seismic shift. Between 2007 and 2010, pioneers like Apple and Google dropped those physical keyboards that were so iconic on early Blackberries. They introduced capacitive multi-touch displays, launched app stores, and suddenly, they demanded desktop-level internet. This essentially crammed a multi-core desktop computer directly into your pocket and, well, changed human civilization forever. Okay, part 4, pushing the physical limits from the 2010s to today. Going into the 2010s, massive camera upgrades and booming app economies required unprecedented silicon engineering. The launch of 4G LTE birthed the modern app economy. Think Uber, Instagram, TikTok. Phones were now HD streaming hubs. Then 5G arrived, offering multi-gigabit speeds and incredibly low latency. To handle this absolute explosion of data, processors had to be flawless. But making massive, monolithic silicon chips was becoming astronomically expensive. There's just no way around it. So, what was the solution? Chiplet architecture. AMD revolutionized the industry by acting like they were playing with Lego blocks. Instead of making one giant, expensive chip that you'd have to throw away if there was even a microscopic defect, they manufactured small, cheap, highly reliable silicon clusters. By stitching these tiny chiplets perfectly together, they massively lowered production costs while giving us incredible 16-core processors. Now, having 16 massive cores drains a ton of battery if you're just, reading a PDF. To balance raw power with marathon battery life, Intel introduced a hybrid setup. They combined high-performance B cores with power-efficient E cores. It's exactly like a hybrid sports car. The processor uses a tiny electric motor for city driving, like downloading files in the background, and instantly fires up a massive V8 engine when you launch a heavy 4K video render. And that leads us to our final section, Part 5, the AI silicon convergence. This perfect balance of muscle and endurance brings us right to our desks and pockets today. Artificial intelligence tasks, like real-time translation, blurring your background on video calls, or generative AI, they drain way too much power on a traditional CPU. Because of that, both desktop chips and smartphones now integrate dedicated hardware called neural processing units, or NPUs. These are specialized AI accelerators built directly into the chip to run machine learning locally and efficiently. Just look at the flagship smartphones of today and the near future. They're literally pocket computers. And they're powered by the exact same multi-core, NPU-driven architectures that run our desktop workstations. We're talking about 8-core CPUs, professional raw camera capabilities, foldable OLED screens, and massive batteries, all performing advanced AI logic right in the palm of your hand. It's just wild to think about. Looking back at this timeline, it's an unbroken chain. On one track, we went from 1G analog car phones to 5G gigabit streams. On the other, we jumped from the 8086 microchip to chiplet architectures and NPUs. It's a true testament to brilliant engineers solving one generational bottleneck, whether that's memory, heat, or cost, only to immediately tackle the next one. And the work never stops, right? As we look toward the early 2030s, 6G is already in development. It promises a jaw-dropping future of AI-native networks that are over 100 times faster than 5G. We're looking at a world of holographic communication, seamless, immersive mixed reality, and even the early stages of brain-computer interfaces. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question. From a heavy 1-kilogram brick phone that lasted 30 minutes to microscopic silicon that basically predicts our thoughts. As our pocket computers merge entirely with AI and holographic global networks, what will it actually mean to be connected in the next decade? This isn't just about faster chips. It's the story of how we seamlessly integrate our minds with our machines. I hope this explainer totally changed how you view the incredible tech sitting right in front of you. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.